say I resigned formally from my volunteer president job at No Better Friend. Good news is I didn't have to take a pay cut because I wasn't getting paid. So my wife's not too upset about that. And I'm glad to hear we're doing relaxed time standards. I have 45 minutes of solid thoughts to share with you. Everyone likes long speeches, right? Depends on the content. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about the urgency of this situation and why I'm running for governor. Here's the deal, folks. It's not a joke. It's not theater. It's not about my next job.
Crime rates, we're seeing the dissolution of law and order. Very intentional on the part of the left. We have leftist DAs, in some cases judges, but at this moment it's actually the DAs that are the bigger problem, that are doing everything they can to get violent criminals back out on the streets. And I do mean the word violent criminals. You talk about the Waukesha parade attack. Had there simply been mandatory minimum bail in the case of violent charges, that parade attack would not have happened. That's right. And I had I've called for John Chisholm to resign.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. And it's important, and I'm happy, I would be happy to fire John Chisholm as your governor. But understand, you bet. But understand, the problem's a lot more complex. Because coming behind John Chisholm is a whole generation of law school graduates who are coming out. And whereas maybe 30 years ago, they would have been aiming to become public defenders and then go into private practice to try and spend their entire career springing criminals out of jail, they now want to become DAs. And they want to spring criminals out of jail by simply not enforcing our laws. So how do you fix this? Well, first, it should have been fixed a decade ago. Harris alluded to this. When we had all branches of government, there was an opportunity to institute these mandatory minimums for bail and sentencing, but it wasn't done. You need a governor who understands that this has to be in place today. And we have to actually take the ball away from the DAs and maintain a standard so that violent criminals aren't getting out. But then the next step's a lot more complex. And as I talk to law enforcement around the entire state, here's the deal, of course, but also Republicans who allow this thing to fester to the point where we can't hire cops anymore. At a moment where we're seeing murder rates double. I tell you all this to impress upon you the seriousness of what we're facing. We've had unserious people in office for an incredibly long time in America. And that includes the state of Wisconsin. A lot of talking points, a lot of photo ops, not many serious long-term solutions. I take nothing away from the fact that good things were accomplished by the legislature a decade ago. Act 10 was an incredibly important thing. We just know that there's so much more to do going forward. So I talked about law and order. Let's talk about our elections for a minute. How about those elections? I didn't have a chance to listen, but I understand Robin Voss was on the radio yesterday defending WEC, the Wisconsin Election Commission. I'll just let the booze soak in for a moment. Robin Voss, of course, told me not to run for governor before I ran for governor. I told him maybe you should focus on your own job before you tell me how to do mine. So, yeah. And here again, let's talk turkey. Let's lay it all out there, like what's happening, right? So the WEC, leading up to the 2020 election, allowed violations of election law. That includes they allowed ballot harvesting. They allowed the institution of ballot drop boxes, which enabled ballot harvesting. And simply put, it's on our books already, in our legislative code that says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that you can neither take nor give a ballot to anybody other than an actual election official. So ballot harvesting is illegal today. I will remind all of you that I'm running in a primary against somebody who, just imagine, and what I said at the time was, not a smart idea. I used slightly more colorful language and it made a few headlines. But the reality is this, it's already illegal. And green-lighting the left to go out and violate election law is not really a good strategy on the part of any candidate for office. The reality is the courts have weighed in. I fully anticipate that the Supreme Court will do the right thing and say this is illegal, and it is. And we can start to move in. The idea is both simple and revolutionary at the same time. But it enables families to make rational decisions about where their kids should ultimately go to school. And I want to talk about why we have to do this, and frankly why we should have done it a decade ago. Many of you probably attended our giant event out there with No Better Friend. We had 1,000 people in the tent in the parking lot. We had people gathering across the entire state of Wisconsin. We had a real frank conversation about what critical race theory is. And as many of you have heard me say in the past, it is the attempt to institute Marxism through the lens of race. Yes. Critical race theory is not an attempt to teach the honest history of the United States of America, which is both beautiful and challenging at the same time, right? Our forebears in this country founded this nation by starting a revolution and fighting it and winning it. Then they fought a bloody civil war to extend the promise of America to everybody in this country. They literally pushed back armies of darkness across the globe and freed entire peoples in a way that no other nation had ever done in human history. And yeah, they also marched to Selma. And they passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which makes it clear you cannot discriminate in the United States on the basis of race or ethnicity. That's an amazing story. And every chance they make it happen. And that's my pledge to you. So this is it. It's a moment of clarity. We all understand like what's on the line. A lot's on the line. What I just talked about were some foundational issues. These are the things that have to be right to get society back on track. And what I'm going to lay out for people, and first on August 9th and then in November, is a very clear choice. If you honestly think that someone who is endorsed by Robin Vos and part of this Madison machine that has lost 11 out of 12 races and has not dealt with things like WEC, all the election issues, and have not gotten school choice to the point where it should be already and allowed mandatory minimums to not happen already in the case of violent crimes, if you honestly believe that person can both win a general election and then will actually go at these problems the way that they should, you got that option in this primary. Right? If you think things are going just fine, you have an alternative in this primary. If you think we should stay the course of 11 out of 12 statewide general election losses, you have a different option in this primary. If you want to reach new people, win the general election, catalyze the entire state, move forward as a people, and actually address the problems that we're all worried about, then I'm your candidate. I've served my nation in challenging times. I was proud to do so. I'll be proud to serve as your governor in challenging times as well as we move forward together. God bless you all, and thank you for having me today.
That they did some important things about a decade ago, but they didn't do everything that had to get done. And that is the problem that I have, and that so many people throughout the state of Wisconsin have with the Madison-based political machine that runs the Republican Party and has lost now 11 out of 12 statewide general elections. We have to fix this going forward. So moving beyond that, so let's talk more about education. Yes, universal school choice. But moving beyond that, curriculum transparency. Every curriculum for both teacher training material and also too for students up online. So that you, the people of Wisconsin, can actually see what your kids are being taught, and then we can create an actual market. And guess what? Over time, that's going to mean that new schools are going to spring up, parents are going to know what are being taught in them, and that's how we're going to address issues like critical race theory, which I know many of you know at No Better Friend for the last couple of years I've gone directly at and called it out for what it is, which is the attempt to institute Marxism through the lens of race. It's not an attempt to actually accurately teach the history of our country, which I'll talk about for just a second. And we should all be proud of this history because it is both challenging and beautiful at the same time. Our forebears fought to found this country in a revolution. Move forward, clarity, transparency, enabling people to make choices to get their kids to the right schools. That's how you get society back on track. Law and order, pretty complicated thing to fix, but one first easy step is mandatory minimums for bail and for sentencing for violent crimes in particular. Should have been done a decade ago. But that will stop the flow of violence onto our streets. Then you can take the hands, the complexity of this, and we'll go municipality by municipality, county by county, and work with leaders at the local level to A, get people to apply to these jobs again, and then B, actually make sure that, yeah, they got the finances to do it, which means cracking open the books and forcing mayors. Robin Vos has fully endorsed my primary opponent. She was on his payroll in 2020. Anyone think she's going to buck him? Not a chance. The reality is he was on radio just the other day, as I'm told, defending the Wisconsin Election Commission and saying everything's just fine. Here's the deal. WEC needs to go. The powers invested in WEC need to be transferred to a Secretary of State. The laws already make it clear that ballot harvesting is illegal in our state. Ballot boxes never should have been in place. WEC allowed that to happen in clear violation of state law. State law, and I'm paraphrasing here, basically says that you can neither take nor give a ballot to anybody but an election official. It's illegal already. All the things that happened in 2020 with ballot harvesting should have never happened. But they did. So we will transfer the powers of the Secretary of State. We will crystallize those laws even further, and I'll work with the legislature to do that, and then we will enforce accountability through transparency. 24 states right now, the Secretary of State that runs their elections campaign, I think everyone in this room knows this, the ground has shifted real fast. The response throughout the state, and I ran in 2018, I lost that Senate primary. This is very, very different. People are hearing what I'm saying throughout the state. They're reacting, they get what the stakes are, and they understand that we're not going to take orders from the Madison political machine that has wound us into this situation because they can't fight the efforts of the left to subsume our society. And yes, we should all be mad at the left for sure, because they are trying to destroy our society. But we should also be mad at those who have shown that they simply can't push back and stop this from happening before it starts. And these are the stakes. We get this right now, or it's not really clear what you even could do in the future. That's how I come at this. Comes to endorsements and all that other kind of stuff. Look, here's the deal. I ran for the Senate in 2018, as many of you know. I lost that primary. On primary day, I won a majority vote in 57 of the state's 72 counties. Prior to that primary, when the people of Wisconsin had a say, RPW had an endorsement. In that endorsement, 44 of those 57 counties either endorsed against me or didn't have representation. We should be very realistic about what that endorsement is. It's an attempt to have the tail wag the dog. And it has helped to participate and result in us losing 11 out of 12 statewide general elections. I'm asking you to be serious on August 9th, to realize what the stakes are. I've served my country in challenging times. I've fought in 2 wars. I've worked in the private sector since, and I get what it takes to actually drive success and to execute. And I look forward to serving in challenging times as your governor. Thank you for having me, and God bless everybody.
The minimums for bail and for sentencing, they should be in place so that we can actually stop the flow of violence onto our streets, like what we saw with the Waukesha parade attack, but like we see every day in Milwaukee, you see in Kenosha, you name it, across our entire state. Yeah, that has to happen, but the next step is so much more complex, and law enforcement officials across our state understand this. They cannot recruit and they cannot retain people into their departments, and that is true of police forces, that is true of sheriffs as well. That is a real issue, and it requires moral leadership. You need a governor to go municipality by municipality throughout our entire state. Sometimes working with willing mayors and county executives, and sometimes working with unwilling ones to drag them along with you to say, law enforcement's an honorable profession, and we need young people to go into it. And then, yeah, we've got to crack the books open. Now, cities like Milwaukee to understand what has been done to their finances. Frankly, let's be honest, cities that have been ignored far too long by the Republican Party, and say there's a better path forward and we can work with you in order to ensure that you can afford to actually get the cops on the streets that you need, but that means delving into your books and find out what you're spending your money on. We don't do that, we're not going to get society back on track. Milwaukee cannot dissolve as it is into a state of chaos. No state's going to be successful without conservative ideas and inviting them to grow our movement, because we have to do that going forward. We have to grow our movement. It's not 2010 anymore. It's not 2014 anymore. We have lost 11 out of 12 statewide general elections as Republicans in Wisconsin. That's not sustainable when the stakes are this high. Elections, yeah, people are mad about elections, and they should be. It is crazy. You bet. Robin Boss has endorsed my primary opponent because he's a part of this Madison machine that runs the state, which I will run against in this primary. That same machine that's really good at winning primaries and has lost 11 out of 12 state general elections. And there was Robin Voss on the radio yesterday, I'm told, defending the Wisconsin Election Commission and saying no substantive changes have to be made. Now I've been asked in a primary, people get upset when you say the truth and it ruffles feathers. Does anybody think that my being nice to people that others are angry at will somehow make people like them in a general election? It is illegal. To paraphrase our state law, you can neither take nor give a ballot to anyone who's not an election official. WEC never should allow ballot harvesting to happen. Ballot drop boxes are absurd. So, we will clarify that further when I'm your governor, and I'll work with the legislature to do that. Transfer powers of WEC into a Secretary of State's office, make the law so crystal clear that no matter who is Secretary of State, they will follow it. And in so doing, we will reestablish faith and trust in our system of government. Instead, that is a machine. I'm sorry it upsets you when people are angry at you, but guess what? You fail time and time again. People will get upset with you. And my just being nice to you ain't going to get it over the ledge in the general election. I want to talk about education because a no better friend, and I know probably many people in this room heard what we said or came to our... I'll sign legislation that bans mandates for vaccines and also too for masks. I have consistently encouraged that can be done quickly and efficiently. I have consistently encouraged people to talk to their doctor about their health concerns because that's the way the world works. You inform yourself. You make decisions that are rational. We do not threaten people with their employment or frankly their livelihood or their life going forward because on a year-to-year basis they have not received what is in essence the equivalent of the flu shot. So let's talk rationally about this going forward. COVID will be with us for a long time. It will change over time, just like other COVIDs have in the past and flus do. And over time, flu shots change too, am I right? Some years you get them and some years you don't. People will make rational choices on this going forward, and that's fine. But we are not going to hold a gun to people's head and threaten them with their employment on the basis of whether or not, again, they've had the equivalent of a flu shot going forward. Why that's so hard for our political media class to understand, I do not get it. Credible leader going forward, people are not going to show up to vote in the general. And everyone in this room knows that. So, I've served my country in challenging, difficult, dangerous, frankly miserable times. And I was proud to do it in the course of 2 wars. And I'm looking forward to serving as your governor in incredibly difficult times as well as we move forward together. God bless you all. Watch that time. Thank you, God.